Smackheads assemble! We are back with another edition of Union Smack. I am of course your host without the most, the Maniac Matt Tennant, and you will hear me right across the Habiki TMD channel this month until Travis returns. Now, as per usual, you can catch me on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. Log on to unionsmack.bigcartel.com where you can purchase an official shirt, you can purchase an official book, and talking of my official book, The Undertaker, A Trip Down Death Valley, you can purchase that now from completelynovel.com. It will make the quarantine season pass with ease, that is a guarantee, but you do not get your money back. You will also, as stated, be able to catch me here all month alongside Bubba as we take on the IWC in Muted, and of course with TJ on a Major League podcast of their own. Now, some good news concerning NXT UK, finally. It's been a while. After several weeks of no new material, and I think it was like 3 highlight shows, where they just had people like Mark Andrew and Flash Morgan Webster pick their favourite match, and they showed it, and Andy Shepherd, I believe, hosted from his living room via Skype. We have finally got some, I'm not going to say new material, because it was recorded last year, and, you know, in the 3 to 4 months we had of NXT UK so far in 2020. But they finally, after 3 weeks of reruns and repeats, have decided to give us some new matches. Some matches we haven't seen before. And so NXT UK Episide 92, which they subtitled Hidden Gems, was filled with dark matches that took place on various shows throughout last year and throughout this year. Now, it's not ideal, I'll grant you, because we need the new current material to move us forward in storylines, to really get the juices flowing, if you like, for NXT UK TakeOver Dublin in September. But it's the best we've got right now. You know, Bournemouth has been cancelled. I talk about that in depth on Tenant Talks issue 8. There are no new tapings planned now until the end of July in Glasgow, and even they could be cancelled if the Scottish Government decide to extend, the lockdown. But luckily, NXT UK do have a wealth of dark matches in the can for fresh shows until at least the end of June, if not going into August. And they will continue to put out episodes filled with either unseen dark matches or highlight shows, as we have seen in the previous 3 weeks. I will say that this is the first NXT UK review we have done in 3 weeks, because we didn't want to bombard you, if you like, with highlight shows. We didn't want to review what we've already reviewed in the past, it's fair enough. The only real new thing on the NXT UK shows we didn't review were like a couple of interviews with some stars. I think there was one with Tyler Bate, with Walter, with Mark Andrews, like I said. But they weren't worth dedicating a whole episode to. Going forward, if NXT UK do run out of dark matches to show us, and I hope they don't, because going on this episode and what's to come, thoroughly approve. I would like to see episodes not just filled with random matches picked by wrestlers, but catered more towards specific rivalries with the relevant angles and the relevant matches from that rivalry to fill out the episode. I think that would help anyone who hasn't really watched NXT UK or who is discovering it for the first time to get a handle on the biggest feuds, to get a handle on the biggest stars. That is certainly the way forward. NXT UK episode 92, and we are so close to 100. Like, we are absolutely on the verge now. 8 more weeks and we will be on episode 100. Fingers crossed by then we're out of lockdown, because it would be really shit if episode 100 of NXT UK was just a recap show. I would like to see them do it live. I don't think they will. But I would like to see a live 100th episode. You know, it's a milestone. It's a celebration. When NXT UK began in 2018, I was going to say 2017, and it did begin in 2017, but not as a brand, just as a kernel of an idea. But when the United Kingdom Championship was won by Tyler Bate in 2017, many didn't even think we'd get this far. Many thought it would be a flash in the pan. It would be a European Championship type thing where it would be just, lost interest in and given to Americans. But it hasn't. It has endured. It has survived. And now we're coming up to episode 100. So, I know Travis will concur with me on this, that a live special, or a live episode at least on the network, maybe 2 hours long, if they can wangle it from somewhere, from some location, would be better than just bypassing it altogether. Tom Phillips introduces us to the episode at hand. He tells us what's to come. He tells us basically what the episode will be formed from. And it's everything I've just said. It's, does what it says on the tin, if you prefer. We get a nifty little video package for the first match, which is Toni Storm versus Deonna Purrazzo for the NXT UK Women's Championship. This was from NXT at Download in 2019. I will say that all the commentary for every one of the 4 matches that we see and we're going to talk about here has been dubbed over by Tom Phillips and Andy Shepherd, because don't forget, these were dark matches. They were never meant to go on television, so there was no commentary as such. So Toni Storm versus Deonna Purrazzo is very good. I very, very much like this match. There's a great beginning as they trade holds and counters. It's very... And I've realised I've said the word very about 5 times in one sentence. But it's so reminiscent of their first match they had in Liverpool at the end of 2018. It might have been like the beginning of 2019 when it was shown. But when it was taped, it was the end of 2018. That was good. This is a step above that. I think the Women's Championship on the line gives it the grandeur the match needs and the meaning it needs also. And of course, Toni Storm and Deonna Purrazzo, this is 8 months after that match in Liverpool, if not a bit longer. They've both grown as a talent. They've both grown, in the ring. And it shows here. Toni Storm looks amazing. And I mean that in the perviest way possible. She is as hot as the sun and looks every bit of it here. As far as the match goes, it's become a trend now that we perv over someone on every podcast. I'll try and break that. Deonna Purrazzo goes to the arm. She did that in Liverpool as well. Worked on the arm to build her finisher. Very logical. I have no problems with that at all. She applies a lovely, and I'm not sure what to call it. It's a half regal stretch, half STF, half surfboard. It looked outstanding, in fact. And it's just a shame that she's gone from WWE now, because, she showed here, and she didn't have to, don't forget, because the cameras were rolling on the off chance they needed the match, but she never thought this would actually be seen. But she gives it her all, and it just shows why WWE should have taken a chance and kept her. There's some excellent sell here from Toni Storm with the arm. She looks genuinely distressed. Like, this could be the end of her career. This could be the end of her championship reign. She can't quite use it. Every time she tries to, it gives out on her. Deonna Purrazzo is the ultimate opportunist. Hits a flatliner onto Storm. into a Koji clutch, which is sublime. Storm tries for the Storm Zero. She can't get it because of her arm. That's very good. I'm glad they added little touches like this in, even though as I've said before, it was a dark match. No one anticipated it being seen ever, unless they were, I don't know, going to put it on a compilation release of some sort. But Toni Storm sells the arm believably, almost like it's a pay-per-view match. She wants to make an impression, and she does. It's very good. I will say, the audience here, and I do know, by the way, for anyone that wants to point it out to me, that this wasn't like the first match on. It wasn't Toni Storm versus Deonna Purrazzo, and then the rest of the download tapings. NXT Download 2019 was a very peculiar beast. It was held over 3 days, for people who don't know. And it was just a mishmash of tapings, dark matches. Sometimes the dark matches would be plonked right in the middle of a taping. So they'd tape 2 matches, cut the cameras, have 3 dark matches, then the rest of the NXT UK tapings. It was very bitty like that, but I do know other matches from this that were never seen were Adam Cole versus Dave Mastiff. They could use that for future episodes. The point I was trying to make, and you'll find, you know me by now, I go off the point quite a lot, but we always find our way back somehow, is that this crowd, by this point, could have been sitting there for 4.5 hours. I understand they were jaded. I understand that they'd seen a lot of wrestling. But in the middle of this technical war, which is what it was an excellent technical war, they started chanting, "We want tables." That was horrendous. It didn't bring the match down, but if it had been a lesser match, then it could have done so. And the ending came when Toni Storm finally mustered the strength in her arm to hit the Storm Zero for the victory. Deonna Purrazzo here was by far the star. This could have been, I'd have to cast my mind right back. I think this is probably, in all fact, Toni Storm's best defence of the NXT UK Women's Championship. And that's sad because no one other than anyone at Download ever saw it during her reign. If she'd have had a few more title matches like this, and a few more challengers as capable as Deonna Purrazzo was, then me and Travis might not have lambasted her so much for a poor reign. And it was a poor reign. I don't care if there's any clowns sitting out there saying, oh, Toni Storm revolutionised the women's division. She didn't. She took a title and she phoned in almost every one of her performances. That is just fact. And if you don't believe me, go back and watch all of her championship defences. Watch the matches where the title wasn't on the line against people like Candy Floss. She phoned it in every time, and it was a shame. And it's an even further shame that the one time she didn't phone it in was on a match that no one really saw. So, do go and check this out. It shows what Toni Storm can do. I am sad about Deonna Purrazzo, that she's not with WWE anymore. They might bring her back, who knows? Who knows what they're doing at the moment with releases and hiring, etc. But if she doesn't come back, she's going to be absolutely fine. She's more than capable in the ring. She's going to be a star somewhere, and I wish her all the very best of luck. A video package airs next for Ligero versus Matt Riddle. Now, this was from Plymouth in 2019. Had to think then. Plymouth 2019. And this was at a time when Ligero was wrestling in that awful fucking S&M chest and shoulder gear, if you remember it. It's basically a shoulder harness that goes across his chest, and on each shoulder he has it's almost a spike. I think it's meant to be a horn, like he's got on his masks. But it looked horrendous. I remember he had a purple and green one. I had to cast my mind back then. And I'm glad he stopped wearing them because they looked fucking cheap and terrible. Ligero versus Matt Riddle. It was a decent match. I'm not going to say it was excellent. I will get into why in a minute. Even though the crowd in Plymouth thought this was excellent, even "This is awesome" chants rang down on the pair. There was some nice back and forth. Matt Riddle hit a brace of gut-wrench suplexes, a lovely exploder, and then the fans started, and I can't bring to mind right now whether this was the taping where the audience just massacred everything with songs and chants of their own because they were bored. But they started to sing Gold by Spandau Ballet, but replacing the lyric Gold with Ligero's name. It wasn't funny, even the first time, and it got tiring the more and more they did it during the bout, unfortunately. Matt Riddle looked great with a jackhammer. Ligero put up a good fight, I will say that about him. He hit a super German suplex from the top rope, a springboard stunner. That's what brought the "This is awesome" chants. And "You deserve it" chants for Ligero. And I can see, he hasn't shown it in NXT UK, don't get me wrong, but on a whole, from his, the beginning of his career to now, he deserves the spotlight against someone like Matt Riddle. However, and I was going to save this for the end of the match analysis, but we're on it now. I don't feel like Ligero made as much of the chance to show he could hang with a top NXT star as he should have done. I feel like he did his usual arsenal, which was fine. You expect it from Ligero, he's a high flyer. But there was nothing more. I just felt he should have put in extra in order to make himself stand out. Because he didn't know. NXT UK weren't using him. So maybe Triple H would have called him up to NXT had he seen something from Ligero here. Ligero didn't know what would have come of this, so he should have given it his best, but he didn't. The match was good when it should have been exceptional. Riddle countered the C4L into a series of lovely reversals and wins with a Broton. It was a very good finale, a very good final stretch, but just a good match. Now, you can come at me for that if you like. It makes, it makes no difference to me whatsoever. But Ligero should have done more. Matt Riddle was the star when Ligero should have been the star, as it's Ligero's brand. And that's all I've got to say about it. I wouldn't say don't check this out, because it is still a solid match, but don't expect too much going into it. Next up was Shayna Baszler versus Isla Dawn, I know, for the NXT Women's Championship. This was from the Download Festival 2019 also. Now, before I start here, this was botchy. This was very bitty and scrappy in places. However, and I do have a however, I have an excuse for why. This was bang in the middle of Isla Dawn's build, if you like, as a wrestler. She was just beginning to make progress. She was just beginning to work on all her flaws and her faults. And she, obviously, you've seen her get so much better since August of last year in the ring. So the timing issues in this can be excused because she wasn't completely there yet. Had this taken place today, this week, last week, then I believe this would have been a memorable match. As it is, it's not so memorable. And it's a shame, really, because this could have done wonders for Isla Dawn. It's, like I said, it's scrappy in places, but Baszler, she does well to cover, the timing issues and the scrappiness of the beginning. by using her bully tactics. She goes to the left arm and it looks brutal. She bends it, she stamps on it. It's just very, oh dear. And Isla Dawn, to her credit, sells it perfectly. She's almost in tears as Shayna Baszler just stamps and wails away on the arm. Dawn makes a fight of it. Sadly, her moves look sloppy. There's a moment where she runs at Shayna Baszler in the corner. Baszler's not really sure what to do with it, so she moves out the way. Dawn collides with the turnbuckle. Doesn't really sell it. Doesn't really look like it was meant to happen at all. And they fumble into the next series of moves. She hits a drop kick that could be the worst drop kick I've ever seen. I could probably do a better drop kick. Travis could do a better drop kick. She could have injured herself on that. She didn't really touch Shayna Baszler, but she collapsed to the floor like a drunk on a Friday night in Glasgow. Looked awful. Isla Dawn wasn't the only guilty party of that, though, because Baszler, a supposedly seasoned NXT veteran, and now obviously main roster player, she picked Isla Dawn up in what looked like was going to be a gut-wrench suplex, which would have been fine, but then she just dropped her on her face. Like, I shit you not. Watch it if you've not seen it. She hoists her up as if she's going to flip her over for a gut-wrench, and it's almost like she goes, nah, fuck this, and just drops to her ass, and Isla Dawn goes face first into the mat. It's uncomfortable watching. How she escaped without a broken nose, I cannot tell you. And the end of this match, mercifully, came when Baszler applied the Kirifuda clutch. Nearly messed up saying that, did you notice? I think I covered quite well. The Kirifuda clutch, and Isla Dawn tapped out. It was predictable, as were almost every match on this card. However, out of the four we saw, I think this was the least interesting of all of them. Just because they could have made more of it. They could have made more of Isla Dawn chasing the title. They could have made more of her standing up to, the bully Shayna Baszler. It didn't have to be all Baszler. A better showing by Dawn could have got her over a lot more. And it's a shame. It's a shame there were so many issues. It's a shame there were so many botches. It's an ugly match. It's an ugly, ugly match, unfortunately. We are taken back to Tom Phillips, who then throws us over to Andy Shepherd. God love Andy Shepherd. Though I will say his commentary still, it leaves a lot to be desired. Sorry, Andy. Andy is sat at home on his couch where he's been for the last 3 weeks, hosting NXT UK episodes. But this time, he is conducting an interview with Ilya Dragunov via Skype. Now. And I always have an issue with everything, but hear me out. This is meant to be a satellite call via Skype. Okay? Now, if you've ever called anyone on video via Skype, which I haven't, I only use Skype to call Travis, to call Bubba, to call TJ to do the shows, and we do it by audio. We don't do it by video. But I've seen in YouTube videos and in television programs, etc., that when you make a Skype call, and it's the same with WhatsApp, because I use WhatsApp regularly to video, you see always the other person on screen, and then you see yourself in the corner of the screen in a little box. Now, when this interview cut to Ilya Dragunov, not only was there no Andy Shepherd in the corner, and there was no Ilya Dragunov in the corner of Andy Shepherd's shot, if that makes sense. To really point out that they were calling each other. He was also in a office of some kind. It looked like he was stood in some meaningless, faceless office in the back of an arena, and this had been pre-recorded months and months earlier, and he was just reacting to what he was told Andy Shepherd was going to say. It looked very, very odd. He was asked how he's dealing with the current situation, i.e. lockdown, COVID-19, being able to wrestle, etc. His answer to that was that he says he keeps his drive and he stays prepared, among other things. I'll be honest, I didn't want to pause this to write everything he was saying down, so I just scribbled down what I could. Then Andy Shepherd asks him how he plans to dethrone Volta when nobody else has been able to. Dragunov says that it's scary, the situation is frightening, and then he goes through all the people who failed to beat Walter and orates that he eats pain and is intensity. It's a nice line. I don't know how much it's going to do for him when Walter pins him, but it's a nice line. He says Walter will underestimate him and make a mistake, and that's when he will get him. But he does point out that this match will redefine violence. And I believe him. Because if you've seen any of Ilya Dragunov versus Volta's WXW matches over the WXW World Championship or the WXW Shotgun Championship or the WXW Tag Team Championships even, they're always very intense, high-paced, brutal as well. You know, Dragunov has come away with some lovely marks on his chest to remind him of his battles with Walter. I hope, and I mean this sincerely because everyone listening to this knows how much I hold NXT UK in high esteem. I put it on another plateau. That's how good I want it to be. I hope that this is a takeover main event because they can deliver. If this was to go 40 minutes, both men can deliver a 40-minute epic. Without the shackles, then they can absolutely give us arguably the best match NXT UK's ever seen. And we know that NXT UK don't really play shackles on their performers at TakeOver. So, fingers crossed for that. Credit, even though this interview was slightly cringe, watching it and watching Dragunov answer questions that had clearly been given to him prior, it was slightly cringe, but credit where credit's due for keeping going the Walter Ilya Dragunov storyline, for not just forgetting it. Because, in all honesty, if they're going to start again after the coronavirus pandemic has gone and they can resume tapings, which they have to start again with talent, etc. And we've mentioned this on Union Smack before, and I've mentioned it on Tenant Talks issue 8. Go and check that out. But they really do have to roll the dice, start again, and basically redefine what NXT UK is, because it has become stale. So, with that in mind, they could have cancelled or Walter Dragunov plans. They could have wiped the Battle Royal from our memories. But they didn't. And I'm glad they didn't. And I'm glad they're going forward with this, because even though Dragunov won't win, we are guaranteed an absolute classic. Next, we see a graphic for the Rise of Imperium next week. This will be, as it says on the tin, next week's episode, a look back at the Rise of Imperium. This is exactly what I said I wanted at the beginning of this show, at the top of the hour, if you like. A good, solid look at a feud, or in this case, a look at a stable who are going places in the world of wrestling and who have made a splash in NXT UK. And that brought us to the main event of this week's episode. Ilya Dragunov versus A-Kid. And I shit you not, this was one of the best matches I think NXT UK have ever produced on television. I'm not sure it lives up to Tyler Bate versus Jordan Devlin at TakeOver Blackpool 2. I'm not sure it lives up to any Pete Dunne match, let's be honest. That's me being biased. But this was epic. This was everything it should have been and a little bit more. There's some lovely holds and reversals in the beginning. We go back and forth with leg scissors, innovative escapes. They get the better of each other. No one can really get on top properly because there's always a reversal waiting around the corner. A-Kid shows that he can mix up his high flying and his mat game to perfection. And then it really gets going. It gets with some heavy hitting, some back and forth through the whole match. There's not one dominant personality here, and I think that aids the match. Ilya Dragunov hits a lovely cartwheel crossbody. I've never seen him done that before, to my almost certain recollection. He hits a top rope tomahawk chop to the outside. Cannot remember when I saw one of them last. Might have even been Tatanka in '94. That's how long it's been since I've seen one of them. A-Kid nails a beautiful chain of moves, ending in a drop kick. By this time, the match has picked up a great pace. You'll never be bored with this. It is balls to the wall. Northern Lights driver by A-Kid rolls through into an armbar. Wonderful near fall on a Constantine special clothesline by Dragunov. The Russian hits a jump kick and a deadlift German suplex that is so brutal, I do not know how A-Kid has any teeth left after it. Kid comes back with a sick ankle hold. He gets Dragunov's ankle at, I think it's almost 90 degrees, and he just bends it without care. I'd have kicked him in the balls for doing that to me, but fair play. Kid hits a top rope Spanish fly, Dragunov flying senton, and a lovely torpedo Moscow for the win. And I don't know whether Dragunov was a bit pissed off with A-Kid for that ankle malarkey, but he drove into him with the torpedo Moscow like he was driving his car into a nemesis. Not the nemesis from Resident Evil 3, but a nemesis. It was brutal. You could hear Dragunov's head collide with A-Kid. So much so, after the match, the referee had to check that A-Kid was not unconscious. It looked lovely, though. Dangerous, but it looked lovely. And there you go. Ilya Dragunov is your winner. The overriding feeling coming out of this match is that this should have been on television. They have enough dark matches from Coventry to do a whole other episode. So there's no reason that they couldn't have swapped this out for another match that we saw from Coventry. Anything with Ashton Smith and Oliver Carter, really. Because this was a stunning bout. You have to see it. You have to check. If you don't, then you're a fool. You're doing yourself out of seeing just an excellent match. My final thoughts on this episode. It was very good. You had 4 matches that we'd never seen before. One of them wasn't great. Isla Dawn versus Shayna Baszler can be skipped over. The other 3 are worth your time to go out the way and watch. It just highlights as well, coming back to NXT UK after 3 weeks, how much I've missed it. Because we don't know now when we'll get another fresh episode as far as material going forward into 2020. We might not see another, brand new episode until August now, which it's quite daunting to think that it could be actually that long until all the storylines are either picked up again or restarted, until we see Tyler Bate and Trent Seven, until we see Walter step in the ring again. It's very up in the air right now, just with everything in the world. But watching this, it made me miss NXT UK. It certainly miss it, because all we're doing now is retro reviews of old Coliseum videos, and they're rough. But talking of the Coliseum videos, it was presented a lot like the old Coliseum videos. There were no entrances for any of the wrestlers. The matches started cold with them both in the ring, and we had the little graphic in the corner telling us who was fighting and when the match was from. This was as close as we're ever going to get, I think, to a modern day Coliseum video release. Now, next week on Union Smack, we're going back to our bread and butter. I say we, I mean me. Going back to what brought us to the dance. We're not going to review NXT UK next week because it's just a recap show looking at the rise of Imperium as a stable. We will, of course, be back with NXT UK when they give us some more of this, when they give us some more dark matches we've never seen. But next week, I will be taking you on a trip into Germany as we review Coliseum Video's home release of WWF Germany Fan Favourites 2. I was originally going to do Fan Favourites 1 from Germany because that's a stunner of a tape. Probably one of the best VHS's Coliseum Video ever put out that wasn't a pay-per-view. But I'll explain more about that next week because I'm a moron. So that is what we're going to be doing next week. WWF German Fan Favourites 2. I cannot wait to get back to you again next week. I can't wait to review that. It's going to be a laugh, if nothing else. Do not forget, you can catch me on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. Do go and support Travis on Twitter at The Habiki TMD. And return to the channel during this week, next week, the week after, to catch myself and Bubba on Muted, myself and TJ on Major League Wrestling podcast of their own, and of course Colin and James Hebert on The Alternative. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening. Thank you for letting us into your homes. Thank you for supporting us all in these tough times, these tough and certain times. But until next week, cheerio, mates.